गुड मॉर्निंग स्टूडेंट्स। बेटा जैसे कि हम सब जानते हैं कि हम लोग नेशनल रीडिंग वीक सेलिब्रेट कर रहे हैं, है ना। इसी में आपकी क्लास 10th बी को एक टॉपिक मिला था, बुक टॉक करनी थी आपको। ठीक है, तो ये वाली एक्टिविटी आज हम करेंगे। तो ग्रुप 1 शुरू करें। वंशिका।
Yes, ma'am. Good morning. Today, we, the students of class 10th B, are going to present a book talk on behalf of Reading Week. So, first of all, Arshia, Dimpy, and me are going to present our book talk. So, when you fall in love with the process rather than the product, you don't have to wait yourself to give the permission to be happy. You can decide any time your system is running. A very good morning to one and all present over here. Today, I, Vanshika, Dimpy, and Arshi of Class B from Kendra Vidyalaya Arjangarh are going to present a book talk on behalf of Library Week. And our book is Atomic Habits, which is written by James Clear. Now, I would be handing over to Arshia to give a brief introduction of both the book and the writer. Arshia.
Thank you, Anshika. James Clear is a personal development keynote speaker and New York Times bestselling author of Atomic Habits. His entertainment talks teach audiences about small habits that make continuous improvement. He doesn't just report the efforts of others, but tries out the concept for himself as he experiments with building better habits as an entrepreneur, writer, and weightlifter. As of 2019, his book Atomic Habits was sold over 8 lakh copies worldwide in 9 months and had 9 straight months on the New York Times bestselling list and 33 weeks on the Wall Street bestselling list of Amazon's most sold list of 2019. Readers have given the book consistently high ratings. In his groundbreaking book, Clear reviews life-altering approach. He uncovers simple hacks and delves into cutting-edge psychology and neuroscience day by day. He says these small changes can significantly your career, your relationships. Before writing this book, there was this incident in his life. On the final day of his sophomore year of high school, he was hit in the face with a baseball bat. As his classmate took a full swing by, slipped out of his hand against her before striking him directly in the eye. He had of himself. The bat hit him so hard that his nose broke and there was swelling in his face. First, he was taken to a local hospital, but due to the swelling and broken nose bone, he stopped breathing and died. So the hospital decided to shift him to a local hospital. His mother flew to another hospital to die. When his sister broke the news to the other family, everyone panicked. By the time he reached the hospital, the swelling was so severe that he wasn't able to move. The war followed. He was covered and placed on the regained consciousness and got his memory. So he was told to smell the apple juice box.
बोला ऐसा गलती से कट गया। जिस जमाने की म्यूजिक हम क्लास ले रही हूँ। देख लेती हूँ। हम अभी देख के बता देते हैं, याद नहीं आता, बहुत सारे ग्रुप हो गए। आई थिंक अचीवमेंट अचीवमेंट करके कुछ था ना।
Like Arshia is not clear, therefore I will give a brief introduction about the writer as well as the book. So James Clear is basically he is a personal development keynote speaker and New York Times best-selling author of Atomic Habits, the book we are going to talk about today. So his entertaining talks teach audiences about small habits, decision making, and continuous improvement. As of July 2019, his book Atomic Habits has sold over 8,000 around 800,000 copies worldwide, enjoyed 9 straight months on the New York Times bestseller, spent 33 weeks on the Wall Street Journal best-selling list, and topped Amazon's most sold list for 31 weeks. Readers have given the book consistently high ratings. On Amazon, it is 4.8 out of 5 stars. Now that I would like to tell you about the book and give a brief summary of it. So, according to the introduction, as we know, this book is about making good habits and breaking bad habits. Now, I would like to state the surprising power of atomic habits. We convince ourselves that massive success requires massive action, although the inverse is true actually. Small improvements accumulate into remarkable results, I'm telling you. We can start by getting at least 1% every day. Habits are the compound interest of self improvement, as we know. The effects of small habits compound over time. A slight change in your daily habits can guide your life to a very different destination. Making a choice that is 1% better or 1% worse seems insignificant in the moment, but over a lifetime, these choices determine the difference between who you are and who you could be. So, your habits can actually compound for you or against you, just like everything have both positive and negative aspects. Now, let me take an example of both the positive and negative compounding. So, for positive compounding, productivity and knowledge. Productivity. Accomplishing one extra task is a small feat on a given day, but it counts for a lot over in an entire career. Knowledge. Learning one new idea won't make you a genius or something, but a commitment to lifelong learning can be transformative. Negative compounding, stress. That themselves, common causes of stress are manageable. But when they persist for years, little stresses compound into serious health issues. Negative thoughts. The more you think yourself as ugly, worthless, or stupid, the more you condition yourself to interpret life that way. The same is true for how you think about others. Now, this is a very important thing. Our systems are greater than goals actually. Goals are about the results you want to achieve, but systems are about the processes that lead you to those results. Goals are good for setting direction, but the systems are the best for making progress. The purpose of setting goals is to win the goal and win the game, but the purpose of building system is to continue playing that game. Sorry. Now, there is a system of atomic habits. If you're having trouble changing your habits, the problem isn't actually you. The problem is in your system. You don't rise to the level of your goals, you fall into the level of your systems. Now, here is how to build better habits in just 4 simple steps. First of all, I would like to tell you how James Clear described habits. This is a very effective habit. This is a very effective way to describe habit. According to him, a habit is simply a behavior that is repeated enough times to become automatic. Now, how to create a very good habit. In this book, we are given 4 laws to create a good habit. The first law is cue. Make it obvious. Over time, the cues that spark our habits become so common that they are essentially invisible. For example, the remote control next to your couch, the phone in your pocket. And one of the greatest challenges in changing habits is maintaining awareness of what we are actually doing. Now, the action steps for this first law, cue, is are given. For example, fill out the habit scorecard. Write down your current habits to become aware of them. Use implementation intentions. Let me give an example, which is I will insert the behavior at insert the time in insert the location now. Use the habit stacking formula, which is after current habit, insert your current habit that you're actually doing. I will insert your new habit that you want to do. Now, fourth, design your environment. Make the cues of your good habits obvious and visible. Now, our second law is craving. Make it attractive. We need to make our habits attractive because it is the expectation of a rewarding experience that motivates us to act in the first place. Now, the action steps are use temptation bundling. Pair an action that you want to do with an action you need to do. One of the most effective things you can do to build better habits is to join a culture where your desired behavior is the normal behavior, and second, you already have something in common with that group. Third, create a motivation ritual. Do something you enjoy immediately before a difficult habit. The third law is response. Make it easy. Make it easy. Reduce the friction between you and your habit. Now, there's a difference between being in motion and taking action. When you're in motion, you're planning and strategizing and learning things. Those are all good things, but they don't produce a result. Action, on the other hand, is the type of behavior that will deliver an outcome. For years, we think that repetition don't matter. Actually, that is wrong. Even repetition is greater than perfection. You don't need to map out every feature of a new habit. You just need to practice that. This means simply to putting in your reps is one of the most critical steps you can take to encode a new habit. Now, the action steps are there is a law of least effort. The least friction you face, the easier it is for you and your stronger self to emerge. So, you must reduce that friction, decrease the number of steps between you and your good habit. Prime the environment. Prepare your environment to make future actions easier. Master the decision moment. Optimize the small choices that deliver outsized impact. Sorry. Use the 2 minutes rule. Downscale your habit until they can be done in 2 minutes or less. Automate your habits. Invest in technology and one time purchases that lock in future behavior. Now, the fourth law, which is the last law of creating good habits, is reward. Make it satisfying. I would like to state the cardinal law of behavior change. What is rewarded is repeated, but what is punished is avoided. We are more likely to repeat a behavior when the experience is satisfying. Make it satisfying. Increase the odds that a behavior will be repeated next time. Now, the action steps are use reinforcement. Give yourself an immediate reward after you complete your habit. Second, make doing nothing enjoyable. When avoiding a bad habit, design a way to see the benefits of it. What? What next? So, use a habit tracker. Keep track of your habit streak and don't break the chain. Never miss twice. When you forget to do a habit, make sure that you get back on the track immediately. Just keep in mind, if I miss one day, I try to get back into it as soon as possible. Now, I would like to quote Charlie Munger, who said that the first rule of compounding is to never interrupt it unnecessarily. Sorry. Now, the above laws can be inverted to learn how to break a bad habit. So, I will not go in that deep here. I will just tell you the action steps of it. So, first is make it invisible. Reduce exposure. Remove the cues of your bad habits from your environment. Put your phone in the other room. That's what distracts us the most. Make it unattractive. Reframe your mindset. Highlight the benefits of avoiding your bad habits. Make it difficult. Increase friction. Increase the number of steps between you and your bad habit. Use a commitment device. Restrict your future choices to the ones that benefit you. Make it unsatisfying. Get an accountability partner and ask someone to watch your behavior. Sorry. Create a habit contract. Make the cost of your bad habits public and painful. Now, you know what? The greatest threat to success is not failure, but actually boredom. We get bored with habits because they stop delighting us. At the end of the summary, I would like to quote James Clear. All big things come from small beginnings. The seed of every habit is a single tiny unit, a tiny decision. But as that decision is repeated, a habit sprouts and grows stronger. Roots entrench themselves and branches grow. The task of breaking a bad habit is like uprooting a powerful oak within us, with that is lying deep here in our heart. And the task of building a good habit is like cultivating a delicate flower one day at a time. Now, I would request Dimpy to give the main highlights of this book. Dimpy.
Thank you, Vanshika. Atomic Habits is a definite guide to break bad behaviors and adopt good ones in 4 steps, showing you how small, incremental, every routines compound add up to massive and positive over time. Atomic Habits offers a proven framework for improving every day. James Clear, one of the world's leading experts on habit formation, reveals practical strategies that will teach you exactly how to form good habits, break bad ones, and master the tiny behaviors that lead to remarkable results. The book atomic habits in 3 sentences is an atomic habit is a regular practice or routine that does not only small and easy to do, but is also the source of incredible power, a component of the system of compound growth. Bad habits repeat themselves again and again, not because you don't want to, but because you have the wrong system for change. Changes that seem small and unimportant at first will compound into remarkable results if you are willing to stick with them for years. Here are 10 things the book will teach. Learn how to build a system for getting 1% better every day. Break your bad habits and stick to good ones. Avoid the common mistakes most people make when changing habits. Overcome a lack of motivation and willpower. Develop a stronger identity and belief in yourself. Make time for these habits. Design your environment to make success easier. Make tiny, easy changes that will deliver big results. Get back on track when you get off course. And most importantly, how to put these ideas in real life. Now, here are some points of the atomic habits book that I like and want to share with you. Habits are the compound interest of self-improvement. If we want to be better results, then forget about setting goals. Focus on the interest. The most effective way to change your habits is to focus not on what you want to achieve, but on who you wish to become. The 4 laws of behavior in our simple set of we can use to build better habits. They are make it obvious, make it attractive, make it easy, and make it satisfying. Therefore, environment is the invisible fact that keeps human behavior. As conclusion, we would like to express our views and tell you why all we recommend this book. Actually, when it comes to changing our behavior, we all need to find out what works for us. As said, there are several scientifically proven strategies we should all try first. Atomic Habits is a complete, fun, engaging, and simple to understand compendium of goal strategies. I highly recommend you make this your first step when wanting to learn about the science of habits. Now, Arshia will express her view on this book. Arshia.
I would just say that this book is worth reading. If you will never find lack of motivation while reading it, as it is written in well organized and simple way with a lot of real life example which will surely help you. Now I'll ask Vanchika to tell us about her views.
I should probably say that this book is supremely practical and useful. This book distills the most fundamental information about habit formation, so you can accomplish more by focusing on less. This engaging book is the guide you need to break bad habits and make good ones. At last, we all would like to quote some words. First of all, Dimpy.
So my last quote is, you should be far more concerned with your current trajectory than with your current results. Arshia.
Goals are good for setting a direction, but systems are best for making progress. At last, Vanchika.
At last, I would like to say that I know it is hard to break a bad habit and create a good one, but it's worth it. So go for it. Thank you so much.
Hope you enjoyed it.
Have a nice day.
Now,
Thank
I
you.
would request Niharika Raj to present her book talk. Niharika.
Thank you, Vanshika. Can I present?
Yes, you can present with it.
नमस्कार, आज मैं यहाँ आपके समक्ष शिव खेड़ा की पहली पुस्तक जीत आपकी पर एक प्रस्तुति लेकर प्रस्तुत हुई हूँ, जो कुछ इस प्रकार है। यह पुस्तक आपको कामयाबी की ओर जरूर ले जाएगी। अपने सपनों को जिंदगी में उतारे। अभी एक बार इस पुस्तक को जरूर। शिव खेड़ा, जो कि एक महान प्रसिद्ध लेखक एवं महान प्रेरक वक्ता भी है। 59 वर्षीय शिव खेड़ा का जन्म 23 अगस्त 1961 को झारखंड के राज्य धनबाद जिला में हुआ था। वह एक मध्यम वर्गीय व्यवसायी परिवार में जन्मे थे। उनके पिता कोयला खदान के व्यवसाय से जुड़े हुए थे व उनकी माता एक गृहिणी थी। जब सरकार ने कोयले का राष्ट्रीयकरण कर दिया था, तब इनके परिवार की भी आर्थिक स्थिति बिगड़ गई थी। इनको अपने जीवन में बहुत उतार चढ़ाव देखने पड़े। एक बार 10वीं की कक्षा में वह फेल भी हो गए थे, पर उन्होंने इसको एक सकारात्मक सोच में लिया एवं अगली माध्यमिक परीक्षा में वह प्रथम स्थान से उत्तीर्ण हुए। बाद में उन्होंने बिहार के कॉलेज से डिग्री हासिल करी। शिव खेड़ा की भी प्राइवेट फर्म तथा कभी दुकान पर सेल्स मैन की नौकरी भी की, पर उन्होंने अपने जीवन में कभी हार नहीं मानी। कुछ वर्षों तक कनाडा में रहने के बाद वो लेखक अमेरिका आ गए, जहां उन्होंने प्रसिद्ध प्रेरक वक्ता नॉर्मन विंसेंट पेयोले उनको सुनने का मौका मिला। उनकी बातों से लेखक बहुत प्रभावित हुए। उसके बाद लेखक के जीवन में एक बहुत बड़ा परिवर्तन आ गया। फिर वह एक महान प्रेरक वक्ता के रूप में विकसित हुए और वह बहुत उभरने लगे। इसी के साथ साथ उनकी रुचि पुस्तक लिखने में भी हो गई। शिव खेड़ा ने प्रेरक और 4 तथ्यों से बड़े अपने चिंतन को लेखन के माध्यम से लाखों लोगों को तक पहुंचाने का प्रयास किया है। उन्होंने अब तक 16 पुस्तक लिखी हैं, जो दुनिया भर में कई भाषाओं में प्रकाशित हुई हैं। वर्ष 1998 में शिव खेड़ा की पहली पुस्तक यू कैन विन प्रकाशित हुई, जिसका हिंदी अनुवाद मैं अभी बता रही हूँ। इस पुस्तक ने बिक्री का एक नया कीर्तिमान स्थापित किया था। बाद में इसका एक नया हिंदीवाद भी किया गया, जो विभिन्न देशों में 16 भाषाओं में प्रकाशित हुआ। अभी तक के अनुमान के अनुसार यू कैन विन की 30 लाख से ज्यादा प्रतियां बिक चुकी हैं। इस पुस्तक के लिए शिव खेड़ा को कई पुरस्कार से भी सम्मानित किया गया है। किताब से जुड़ी कुछ जरूरी बातें। इस किताब में लेखक की ओर से हमें बहुत कुछ सिखाने का प्रयास किया गया है। उनमें से कुछ जरूरी पाठ कुछ इस प्रकार है। अध्याय 1, नजरिए का महत्व। अध्याय 2, सकारात्मक नजरिए कैसे विकसित करें। अध्याय 3, सफलता। अध्याय 4, हमें कौन सी चीजें पीछे धकेल रही हैं। अध्याय 5, प्रेरणा। अध्याय 6, आत्मसम्मान। अध्याय 7, आपसी मेलजोल का महत्व। अध्याय 8, अपनी अच्छी शख्सियत बनाने के 25 तरीके। अध्याय 9, अवचेतन और मन और आदतें। अध्याय 10 लक्ष्य बनाएं। अध्याय 11, नैतिक और दुआएं। यह किताब किस किस्म की है? एक नजरिए से देखा जाए तो यह एक निर्माण पुस्तिका है। ये कामयाबी के लिए जरूरी औजारों के बारे में बताती है और एक खुशहाल और भरपूर जिंदगी का नक्शा तैयार करती है। अगर हम इसको दूसरे नजरिए से देखें तो यह एक लजीज खाना बनाने वाली रेसिपी वाली किताब जैसी है। जिस तरह खाना बनाते समय उसमें इस्तेमाल होने वाली सही चीज को सही मात्रा में मिलाया जाए तो ही खाना बढ़िया बनता है। इसी तरह इस किताब में उन उसूलों की बात की गई है, उनका सही मात्रा में इस्तेमाल आपको कामयाबी की हर ऊंचाई तक पहुंचा सकता है। लेकिन सबसे बढ़कर यह एक गाइड बुक है, हर कदम पर कामयाबी का सपना देखने वालों से लेकर सपनों को सच करने तक के रास्ते बताती है। शिव खेड़ा एक महान बात कहते हैं, जीतने वाले कोई अलग काम नहीं करते, वह हर काम अलग ढंग से करते हैं। तो याद रखिए, अगर आप जीतने वाले हैं तो आप कोई अलग काम मत करिए, उसको एक अलग ढंग से करिए। अपने जीवन में सफल होंगे। आपकी सब्र एवं साथ के लिए मेरी तरफ से धन्यवाद। Now I'm requesting Manu to
First of all, let me know is I'm audible.
Yeah, you're audible.
You can first of all let me present my screen. You can't make decisions based on the fear and the possibilities of what might happen.
Now there is a question. Are you able to make decision under pressure?
So now we are going to talking about the author. Blink: The Power of Thinking Without Thinking was written by Malcolm Gladwell. Blink: The Power of Thinking Without Thinking, 2005, is Malcolm Gladwell's second book. It presents
It presents in popular science format research from psychology and behavioral economics on the adaptive unconscious mental process that work rapidly and automatically from relatively little information. If consider both the strengths of the adaptive unconscious, for example, in expert judgment and its pitfalls such as prejudice and stereotypes.
so there are three messages of the blink. First one is so decision made very quickly can be every bit as good as decisions made cautiously and deliberately.
The second one is to know when should we trust our instincts and when should we be wary of them.
And the last one is our snap judgment and first impression can be educated and controlled background images.
Now
So the
there are
agenda of the
there are
book is
nine.
about
Yeah, you
first
can.
one is about the author, an overview of blank,
Thin slicing, blinking in business, and priming.
Relationships in our subconscious when we become forced to blink what we think we know, strengths and flaws.
blank, an overview of blank. Blink is non-fiction book with 7 chapters. Its paperback edition consists 320 pages.
Blink is written in a scientific yet conversational style and is aimed at the broadest possible audience.
Gladwell describes the main subject of his book as thin slicing, the ability to use information from a very narrow period of experience to come to a conclusion. He suggests that spontaneous decisions are often as good as or even better than carefully planned and considered ones.
Gladwell sets himself 3 tasks. The first one is to convince the reader that these snap judgments can be as good or better than reasoned conclusions.
Second one is to discover where and when rapid cognitions proves a poor strategy, and last one
To
to
examine how the rapid cognition result can be improved.
Gladwell says snap decision making can make you better at your job, improve your relationship, and unlock new worlds of understanding.
CEOs, managers, employees, and consumers often make bad choices because they have been given too little information, and other times because they have too much.
He knew too much.
A different and better world.
Blink is concerned with the content and origin of the instantaneous impressions and conclusions that spontaneously arise when we make decisions under stress.
It is about understanding ourselves and our world.
Too much attention is paid to the grand themes and too little to the fleeting moments.
Instead of scanning the horizon with our binoculars, if we examine our own decision making and behavior through the most powerful of microscopes, we can change our world for the better.
There is as much value in a blink of an eye as in months of rational analysis.
Now let's know about the summary of the book. In the 1980s, the Getty Museum of Art in California purchased an ancient Greek statue. Experts spent months confirming that the statue was indeed ancient eventually. They conclude that it was, but other people, including some renewed art historians, thought otherwise.
After looking at the statue for for just a couple seconds, they had an intuitive feelings that something was wrong about the statue. Sure enough, the statue turned out to be a likely forgery sold on the black market. Blink is a book about intuitive feelings and snap judgments. Judgments which are often, though not necessarily, more accurate and insightful than months of analysis.
In the first chapter of the book, Gladwell introduced some of the basic rules of snap judgment or rapid cognition. Humans are capable of making complex, rational judgment about the world, but they are also capable of something called thin slicing, that a very small, specific amount of evidence about the world and then drawing big conclusions from this thin slice of reality using a combination of experience and institution. In the case of the Getty statue, the art historians who immediately thought that the statue was a fake may have thin slices the available evidence, the statue appearance, and drawn the conclusion that the statue was a fake.
The psychologist John Gottman has trained himself to thin slice interactions between married couples by studying the conversational patterns and facial cues of a couple for just a few minutes. Gottman can predict to a near certainty whether or not the couple will still married in 15 years. While Gottman is an expert at thin slicing, Gladwell argues that all human beings are initially good at thin slicing.
Gladwell has shown that rapid cognition allows people to make often surprisingly accurate judgments about the world. But in chapter 2, he introduced a strange problem. Even if people are good at making snap judgments about the world, they are bad at explaining their own judgments. For example, psychologists have found that people's actual taste in romantic partners are very different from what they think their tastes are. Put another way, people can't explain what they want.
The world of professional sports is full of examples of people who initially do certain things but can't put into words why they do them. For example, the tennis great Andre Agassi always claimed that he rolled his wrist when he returned a shot, even though experts have determined that he did not so much think. In short, there are certain human behavior for which the explanation takes place behind a locked door instead of trying to explain everything. Perhaps people should accept that there are limits of to rational explanation.
So far, Gladwell has been talking about how thin slicing can be a helpful way for humans to understand the world. But of course, there is no guarantee that thin slicing is accurate at all. In chapter 3, he talks about the stereotyping, the cases in which people's snap judgment about the world are wrong, even harmful.
But the political career of President Warren Harding is a great example of how wrong snap judgments can be. Millions of people elected Harding because he looked presidential, and yet he turned out to be one of the worst presidents in history. Although people may be reasonable and accepting in their day to day lives, and they are often capable of making prejudicial or even racist snap judgments when they are put under pressure.
In car dealership, for example, it is been found that black people receive higher initial offer than white people do. While one could interpret this evidence to prove that car salesmen are consciously being racist, Gladwell suggests a more subtle experience. Even if car salesmen are tolerant and unbiased in their conscious mind, they may still make racist judgment about people when they thin slice.
In the second half of the book, Gladwell explores some of the case studies of his theory of thin slicing. In chapter 4, he looks at the famous Pentagon War game of 2000, in which an enemy red team and a heroic blue team engaged in a mock war for control of Middle East. The red team was controlled by Paul Van Ripper, a former Vietnam commander who used an improvisational, intuitive style of leadership.
Although the blue team had for more soldiers and firepower than Van Reaper's red team and used a rigorous rational decision making processes. Van Riper was able to devastate and blue team's forces. One important lesson to draw from this story is that more information isn't always helpful in the decision making processes. In fact, extra information can distract and confound the decision makers.
Gladwell described the process of verbal overshadowing, in which the act of attempting to vocalize and rationalize one's decision prevents one from making good intuitive decisions. When Ripper succeeded as the commander because he didn't overburden his troops and commanders with excessive information, he used intuition and rapid cognition to flight the blue team. In chapter 5, Gladwell studies the process of polling, a good example of how poorly people understand their own needs and desires. The musician Kenna has been trying to make it big for more than a decade. He is highly talented and gets glowing reviews from professional musicians, producers, and lyricists, but for some reason, his music has never tested well among audience. When a sample audience is asked to listen to his music and rate it, he never gets good reviews.
Gladwell argues that Kenna's poor audience tests don't necessarily prove that he's a bad musician or that he couldn't be a big star. Polls and tests are notoriously unreliable because they force people to put into words what they do and don't like about a product, a process that often interferes with people's rapid cognitions. Gladwell discusses many examples of successful products. Green, the Aaron chair, the TV show, all in the family that tested poorly but ended up being hugely successful.
In a poll or test, it's easy and for sample audience to confuse different or bad, with the result that often revolutionary new products test poorly simply because they are so novel. Perhaps Canna's problem is that music studios are too reliant and test audiences. A new creative musician like Canna won't necessarily do well with test audience, even if he could be a superstar.
Now, in chapter 6, Gladwell studies that the tragic case of Amadou Diallo, an immigrant who was murdered by four plainclothes police officers in 1999. And while Diallo's death seems like a textbook example of police racism, Diallo was unarmed and standing outside his apartment building when the police officers approached him. Gladwell suggests that the four police officers were not consciously racist in their behavior. Rather, they experienced a crisis of rapid cognitions during which they may have fallen back on subconscious racist behaviors intuitively.
Humans are good at reading other people's expressions and gestures, but in a high stakes situation, such as a police case, people lose their ability to interpret praise. Temporarily autistic, Gladwell argues that police officers should be trained in interpret facial cues, as this will help them act sensibly in high stakes situations and avoid making the kinds of reckless snap judgment that led to Delos' death. In the conclusion, Gladwell talks about the rise of blind audition in the world of classical music, which has to led to record number of classical music, which has led to record number of women in entering allied orchestras. Blind auditions are a great example of rapid cognition at its best because they allow judges and selection committees to hear performers without any biases and prejudice. In short, Gladwell suggests that rapid cognition isn't inherently good or bad. Sometimes thin slicing helps us to make insightful judgments about others, and sometimes it leads us to stereotype. However, by controlling the process of thin slicing just a little, by training police officers to interpret facial cues more accurately, by introducing blind audition, etc., we can use rapid cognition to make the world fairer and safer. So now let's talk about thin slicing. Thin slicing is a term used in psychology and philosophy to describe the ability to find patterns and events based on thin slice or narrow window to experience. The term means making very quick inference about the state, characteristics, or details of an individual or situation with minimal amount of information. These judgments based on thin slicing are similar to those judgments based on much more information. Judgments based on thin slicing can be as accurate or even more accurate than judgment based on more information. The statue that didn't look right.
A story about how a simple hunch emerged victorious over months of research.
It took Getty 14 months to investigate the authenticity of the photos and cost them just under US dollar 10 millions. However, a number of art experts in the first 2 seconds of looking at the statue in a single glance felt an intuitive repulsion and proved that it was a forgery. Blink is about those first 2 seconds.
Now, priming. Now, are we smart because we think we are? An experiment about how seemingly harmless questionnaires influence academic performance. Let's play the word game. Can an otherwise random series of words influence the way we behave? Flaws. Link was too hasty in drawing inference from its illustrations and experiments. Gladwell drew too many conclusions from a variety of fields where he had no real expertise. Link failed to analyze all many of the theories it promotes. Although Blink emphasizes the importance of experience in employing instead efficiently, and it still often comes across as contradictory and implausible in its theory of thin slicing. In term of structure, Blink often failed to distinguish clearly between the subject matter of its chapter.
The part of our brain that leads to conclusion is called adaptive unconscious. This new notation of adaptive unconscious is thought of instead as a kind of giant computer that quickly and quietly process a lot of data we need in order to keep functioning as human things.
Thank you so much. Hope you all enjoy our book talk.
थैंक यू
Thank you
स्टूडेंट्स,
so much.
बहुत अच्छा प्रेजेंटेशन रहा आपका, बहुत बढ़िया था बेटा। थैंक यू एंड हैव अ नाइस डे।
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am.